"You're a risk to our image," Dr. Lenore said loud enough for every child to hear. Then she handed me my termination letter, face up, on top of the read-aloud book I'd been holding. 22 fifth graders stared at me like the floor had just opened beneath them. I stood there, still holding The Longest Shadow, the same book I'd read at Story Circle every Thursday for the last 6 weeks. It was Wednesday. Lenore didn't wait for a response. She turned to the children, face smoothed into sympathy, voice fake soft. "Mr. Rourke won't be finishing class today. A new teacher will start Monday." One girl whimpered. One boy dropped his pencil. Principal Harrow came in next, eyes locked on the linoleum. Behind him, Ms. Penny from HR held a small cardboard box. Security followed. I was still wearing my Read More lanyard. It had a dinosaur on it. I'd bought it for Literacy Week. The board members didn't speak. They just watched like a firing squad, not angry, just efficient. Lenore continued, "Your presence at the book fair raised serious concerns about appropriateness. We've had a formal complaint from a member of the community. Given today's environment, we can't afford controversy." Controversy. That was the word they used for truth now. I nodded once. Took the box from Ms. Penny, no questions, no defense. That's not how you win. Jamie near the back stood up. "This isn't fair." His voice cracked. Lenore ignored him. I started packing. Slowly. The classroom was silent except for the air vent buzzing overhead. The kind of silence that makes kids think adults are about to fight. But there was no fight. Just a man putting books into a box like his hands still worked. I picked up the classroom turtle log, left it on the desk for whoever would be replacing me. Marla had tears in her eyes. She was holding the same book that got me removed. The irony would have been funny if it hadn't been so predictable. I walked toward the door. Logan tried to follow me. "Sit down," Lenore snapped. He froze. I didn't. One security officers flanked me by the water fountain. Not necessary, but visually useful, I suppose. As they walked me through the main office, a parent looked up from her phone. "Is that the teacher who brought that abuse book to the fair?" One of the guards didn't answer. The other said, "We're handling it." I didn't look at her, but I saw the headline in her eyes. "Local teacher promotes graphic material to children." When we passed the library, I caught the librarian's face through the glass. She looked away. Fast. The book fair table was still set up. The complaint letter they claimed to receive. I'd seen that exact phrasing in a PTA newsletter last spring. The author's name wasn't listed, but the language, almost word for word. I remembered the phrase, "cultural rot disguised as healing." That wasn't something a parent came up with on their own. It was something a lobbyist wrote, and I knew exactly which one. Because I'd helped his daughter when she collapsed crying in the library last year. Because I still had the file she left behind. Because I knew things no one wanted said out loud. I stepped outside. The air was sharp and blue. One of the security guards mumbled something about the weather. I didn't answer. My car sat at the far end of the lot, alone. It used to have a faculty tag on the dash. That was gone now, too. I got in, set the box in the passenger seat, looked down at the termination letter. One line stood out, bolded and centered. "This decision is final and effective immediately." I folded the paper once, then twice. Slid it into the glove box next to a jump drive labeled, "Haskin, Ethics Complaint, Backup 01. I turned the key. The engine started. I didn't look back. They thought it was over. It wasn't. It had just begun. My name is Thomas Rourke, 5th grade teacher. 19 years in the same room, same district, same building with the flaking gym floor and vending machines that ate quarters for fun. I didn't start out as a teacher. I was an insurance representative in Boston, made decent money, wore ties, spent half my life lying with my teeth and the other half wondering when my chest would explode. Then Lindsay got sick, our daughter, 6 years old. It started with fevers, then seizures, then more machines than I could name. I used to sit in that hospital holding her hand through tubes and beeps reading Charlotte's Web because she liked the sound of my voice. When she died, my world collapsed. Everything went quiet. My wife left 6 months later. She said she couldn't stay in the same house. Said she couldn't look at me without seeing a grave. I quit my job. Took the first opening I could find. A substitute posting in South Pines Elementary, 110 miles west of where I used to live. Hey, put me in a kindergarten class. I didn't know what I was doing. But a kid named Eli threw up on his shoes and cried, and I just knelt next to him and told him it was okay. He stopped crying after that. The principal watched from the hallway. The next week, she offered me a long-term contract. That was almost 2 decades ago. Over the years, I became the quiet one. Never loud at meetings. Never involved in PTA drama. Didn't care about merit badges or performance bonus. What I cared about was making sure every kid in my class felt safe, especially the ones who didn't talk much, especially the ones who came to school hungry or flinched when the bell rang too loud. I paid out of pocket for classroom books every year, had shelves full of titles the district didn't approve but never questioned. Stories about resilience, grief, trauma, healing. I knew what kind of kid needed those. I'd raised one. My classroom wasn't flashy, no smart boards, no TikTok assignments, but kids learned to read in room 23. They learned to listen, to sit with a feeling, to apologize without being forced. I didn't talk about Lindsay, but sometimes when a kid couldn't sleep after their parents fought all night, I'd give them a warm pass to the nurse's office and say, "Rest is learning too." They never knew I understood. That was the point. 2 years ago, I got into it with the mayor's son. Not physically, verbally. His daughter, Sarah, was being bullied during recess, fat-shamed by a group of boys. The aides didn't intervene, so I did. I made the boys write apology letters. Not the fake kind. The kind where you sit with what you did. Next thing I know, the superintendent's office is calling about undue emotional burden placed on minors. I didn't back down. I didn't know it then, but that made me a target. The following year, my name disappeared from 2 district newsletters. Then came the modernization push, a new principal, a new PTA president, and suddenly it wasn't about kids anymore. It was about donors, optics, community alignment. They said those words a lot. Community-aligned values, usually when they meant, don't rock the boat. Last year, I ran a small after-school book club, unfunded, just 7 students. We read The Longest Shadow, a middle-grade novel about a boy who grew up in an abusive home and found peace in writing. No graphic scenes, no trauma, just truth. That same week, a girl named Emily had a breakdown in the library, 10 years old, crying in the corner behind the encyclopedias. I found her, sat with her for 20 minutes before she said anything. "Sometimes," she whispered, "the bruises are on the inside, so no one can see." Her last name was Haskin. Her father was on the state business council, the same man who gave the school a donation last quarter large enough to renovate the gym. The same man now under federal investigation for wire fraud and corporate coercion. Emily's file never made it into the official system. I kept a copy, not out of spite, out of fear that it would disappear. And then, a week before the book fair, the PTA issued a new list of suggested titles. The Longest Shadow was not on it. I kept it on the table anyway. 1 copy, paperback. That's all it took. When the complaint came in, it wasn't signed. Just a printed letter with terms like morally regressive, psychologically manipulative, and not reflective of our district's values. I recognized the phrasing. Almost line for line, it matched a political op-ed published 6 months earlier in the Sentinel, written by Margaret Haskin. Same last name, same tone, same agenda. I didn't say anything when I read it, didn't respond when HR requested clarification, because I knew this wasn't about a book. It never is. I wasn't the flashy teacher. I didn't tweet about student projects or post dance routines to win over parents. I showed up, taught, sat with kids when they hurt. That used to be enough. Now it's not even tolerated. So when they walked in with the letter, when they handed me that piece of paper in front of my students, when they pretended it was about appropriateness, I didn't fight, I didn't cry, I didn't shout, I just packed my box. Because they thought they were ending something. They didn't know I still had the file. It didn't happen all at once. It never does. They don't fire people like me overnight. Not after 19 years. Not with test scores that climb and discipline referrals that don't exist. No, first they starve you of relevance. Then they salt the ground behind you. Then they pull the trigger and make it look like your own hand. The first sign came when the book list changed. It was 2 weeks before the fall book fair. A thick envelope landed in my mailbox in the staff lounge. Usual stuff. Updated PTA guidelines, an instruction sheet about display materials, and a cover letter stamped district recommendation only in bold italics. The approved list was Safe, Shel Silverstein, a few newer fantasy titles, one about a talking dog solving mysteries. Nothing with real pain, nothing that looked back at you. The Longest Shadow was missing. So was Ruby on the other side. So was Scars Beneath Socks, the one Marcus had asked for 3 months ago when his uncle died. At the bottom of the list, a line stood out. Please avoid titles that center on trauma, abuse, or grief. Our focus this year is inspiration and joy, which is a poetic way to say, pretend those kids don't exist. I asked about it at the staff meeting, softly, professionally. Number 1 answered. The second sign was my student teacher, Abigail Pierce. Smart, young, genuinely good with the students. She'd been shadowing me since September, asked great questions, showed up early. Then, 2 days after I asked about the book list, she stopped showing up. No email, no call, no goodbye. When I checked the intern schedule, her name was still listed. When I asked Harrow, he said she'd been reassigned to a different pedagogical context, whatever that meant. When I reached out to her university advisor, someone I'd mentored years ago, he never replied. I stopped asking. The third sign was more subtle. Emails. My name disappeared from the Friday Principal Digest. I stopped receiving updates on IEPs I was supposed to be part of. When the fire drill map was updated, room 23 was listed as temporary vacancy. I was still teaching. When I asked Harrow, he told me to check my spam folder. I did. It was empty. The fourth sign was a whisper. Friday morning, before class, Logan came in early. Usually he just sat in the back and drew dragons until the bell rang. But that day, he hovered near my desk, backpack still on. "Are you leaving?" he asked, eyes not meeting mine. I paused. "What makes you say that?" He shrugged. "Heard Mrs. Carlton tell Miss Anna you were getting replaced. Because of the thing." "What thing?" He looked nervous. "The book thing?" I smiled gently, told him not to worry, that sometimes adults talk before they know what they're talking about. He didn't look convinced, neither was I. The fifth sign wasn't a whisper. It was a letter, typed, printed, folded neatly into thirds, slipped under my classroom door Monday morning. It wasn't signed. It didn't need to be. It accused me of pushing controversial ideologies onto children, claimed my literature choices created a psychologically unsafe environment, and blurred the line between education and indoctrination. There were 3 quoted sentences from The Longest Shadow, each pulled out of context, all centered around healing after abuse. One was underlined, "The first time he told someone he didn't cry, he just stared out the window." There was a final sentence at the bottom of the page, "This is a place for learning, not bleeding." The tone was familiar, clinical, righteous, sharp enough to hurt. It read like a manifesto, or an op-ed, or a political campaign speech. I took the letter home, filed it in the black folder I kept in the drawer beneath the furnace, the one labeled Margaret Haskin, Collateral, Correspondence, Patterns. I didn't bring it to the union, didn't report it to HR, because I'd already seen how this would play out, and I was done giving warnings. The final sign came the day before they fired me. I walked into the staff room, 12 teachers, 3 aides, 1 custodian. Number 1 spoke. Number 1 looked up. Someone had made brownies. A flyer for the book fair was posted on the fridge. Under special guests, 4 names were listed. My name wasn't one of them, but there it was on the calendar. Story circle, Mr. Rourke, 2:15 p.m., room 23. The same room they'd walk into the next day. The same time they'd tear it all down. I went home that night, fed the neighbor's dog, took my blood pressure meds, reread the complaint, pulled up the drive I'd stored 6 months earlier. Haskin, lobby ties, Emily H. Unfiled report, 2022, email, PTA memo draft, cultural rot language, board contact sheet, private cell numbers. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel betrayed. I didn't feel anything at all. Just ready. The day after they fired me, the world didn't stop. The sun came up. The radio played the same 4 songs. Someone had dumped a mattress behind the Dollar Mart again. I sat in my kitchen with black coffee and no appetite. The mug still said world's okayest teacher. It was a gag gift from Marla's mom last Christmas. She used to call me the stable one, the one who didn't yell, the one who just showed up. Now I was something else. I checked my phone. 6 messages, all from unknown numbers. 2 were reporters. 1 was a podcast. 1 was from a blocked caller that just said they didn't do this right. I didn't respond. Not yet. Not until I was ready. At 10 a.m., I drove out to the old part of town. There's a place behind the veterinary clinic, a converted shed now rented as a private office. On the door, J. Mallory, retired administrator, educational legal services inside. The lights were off, but she was already at her desk. Jean Mallory, former principal, sharpest mind in the district before she took early retirement under political pressure. She saw me and nodded. "I was wondering how long it'd take you to show." I didn't smile, just handed her the file. She opened it. Didn't speak for 3 minutes. When she finished reading, she leaned back in her chair. "You still have the original drive?" I nodded. "Anyone know?" "No." She tapped the edge of the folder. "They made a mistake." I spent the rest of the week off-grid. No emails, no statements, no public reaction. Let them talk. The district issued a generic release by Friday. South Pines School has parted ways with Mr. Thomas Rourke due to conduct not aligned with district values. That line spread fast. First the PTA forums, then Twitter. Then the local news ran a story with my picture. Grainy, from the yearbook, the year I'd shaved my beard. They cropped the turtle out of the background. The fallout came fast. One parent sent me a message through Facebook. My son asked if he did something wrong. "If you left because of him." I didn't respond. I wrote the sentence down and filed it under a folder labeled Impact Direct. That Sunday, I received an envelope. No return address. Inside, a gift card to the bookstore I used to take my class to, and a note, handwritten in blue ink. "We believe you, even if we can't say it out loud." There was no signature, but I recognized the handwriting. Emily Haskin's mom. That night, I opened the hard drive again. Every file was intact. PTA emails discussing which books to phase out, private meeting minutes mentioning optics management, a text thread between the board president and Margaret Haskin. "Rourke's a relic. One good headline and we can pivot him out." Then there was the video. Emily, hunched in the corner of the library, whispering about what he said when Mom was gone, what the bad room was, what she was told would happen if she talked. I had redacted it back then, filed it, hoped someone higher up would take it. No one ever did. On Monday, Principal Harrow called. I didn't answer. His voicemail said, "We should talk about your transition. There's concern about lingering perception." He meant damage control. He meant panic. I forwarded the message to Jean. Her reply was one sentence. "It begins." By Wednesday, I had mapped out the entire web. The Haskins, the school board president, the mayor's office, the shell companies listed under donation sponsors, the joint account connected to an address in Annapolis, linked to 3 different lobbying payments. The man who approved my termination letter also sat on the board of a children's book publisher that got exclusive rights to the new approved titles list. It wasn't about a book. It never was. It was about power, access, and silence. They used me as a pivot point, an example to pacify the press and appease the funders. But they'd forgotten something. I don't scare, and I don't disappear. Friday afternoon, I made a call. 3 rings. Then a voice. "You're still alive?" I smiled for the first time in weeks. "Barely," I said. "You bringing me a bomb?" "Just truth. Better." It was Carter Jensen, local journalist, former student. He once wrote an op-ed defending me in high school when I let a homeless kid skip detention to get dinner. Now he ran his own newsletter. "Send it all," he said. "But give me the okay when to go public." "Not yet," I replied. "Waiting for something?" I nodded, though he couldn't see. "For everything to rot just a little more." That night, I sat in my dark living room, silence buzzing through the air vents. My hands were still. My breathing was even. Not anxious, not angry, just certain. They fired me to protect an image, but I was never the risk. I was the evidence. And now, I was the witness. It started with an envelope, no return address, just a white packet slipped under the door of the county's educational ethics office. Inside, a printed email chain between Margaret Haskin and the board president, a donation routing document with 3 matching addresses, a time-stamped still image of Emily, in the library, whispering about the basement. No letter, no accusation, just evidence. That was enough. The second move was digital. I built a Dropbox folder, private, labeled it Curriculum Correspondence Archive. Inside, meeting minutes from the PTA's Community Alignment Subcommittee, video footage from the October meeting where Principal Harrow discussed reputation first, pedagogy second, a scanned memo from the assistant superintendent with a list of books labeled Optics Liability or Phase Out. I didn't send the folder to the media. Not yet. I shared it with one person, Carter Jensen. He messaged back within the hour. "You want slow burn or front page?" "Slow," I typed. "Make them sweat." The third strike was internal. Jean made the call, anonymous, recorded, to the office of State Representative Elaine Cho, chair of the Subcommittee on Educational Transparency. She dropped 3 names, 1 date, and a single phrase. "The board is using book bans to launder public image through donor-backed curriculum restructuring." No response. 3 days later, the state education liaison requested a formal review of South Pines District's donation policy, a review that made the front page of the Sentinel. The headline didn't mention me. It didn't need to. I was the shadow under the story, the shape behind the curtain. The 4th piece was public. Carter published an editorial under a pseudonym. Title, "The Teacher They Silenced." No names, no school, just a story about a 5th grade teacher punished for offering a book that helped one student find words for what her father had done. The story went viral. It was shared by 2 authors whose books were on the PTA's blacklisted list. Then it hit Twitter, then Reddit, then came the emails. Was this in our district? Is this about Mr. Rourke? Why haven't we heard from the board? The board said nothing, which was the worst move they could have made. On Tuesday, I mailed a hard copy of the Emily video transcript, redacted, to the office of the school's legal counsel. No note, no threats, just the line from the district's own handbook highlighted in yellow. Failure to escalate disclosures of abuse may constitute criminal negligence. No one called me, but 3 board members went into closed session the following afternoon. One parent texted me a photo of the school parking lot, 5 unmarked cars, 2 men in suits walking side by side. Thought you'd want to see this, the message said. No name attached. I stayed quiet, didn't post, didn't leak more. The board tried to float a new narrative, that I'd resigned voluntarily. Carter dropped the security camera screenshot from the day of my removal. It showed me being flanked by 2 officers carrying a box. No caption, just the photo. It didn't need context. Everyone knew what that meant. Meanwhile, something unexpected happened. Students. They started drawing pictures of me, in class, at home. One showed up online, a crayon sketch of me holding a book with the words, "Mr. Rourke reads books that matter." It made the news, not because of what it said, but because of what came next. Dozens of other drawings, emails, letters, testimonials, from kids, from parents, from former students, from one teacher who anonymously wrote, "We all saw what happened. We were told to say nothing. I'm done being silent." The district tried to clamp down, but it was too late. Because the story was no longer mine, it was theirs. All of theirs. The final move was surgical. I sent a package to the office of the Inspector General. Inside, a thumb drive, a sealed affidavit signed by Jean Mallory, a notarized copy of the 2022 incident involving Emily, a cover letter with 6 bullet points, each ending in failure to report. I didn't sign it. Didn't need to. The document spoke louder than any name. The system would do the rest. That night, I sat on my porch with a glass of tap water. No whiskey, no music, just the buzz of streetlights and the hum of a neighborhood that still thought I was gone. I wasn't. I was more present than ever, just not in the way they could erase. They fired me to silence me, but they never asked what I kept, what I saved, who I still knew, or how quietly I could wait. Tomorrow, the news would break, but tonight was quiet, and that was enough. The arrest happened on a Wednesday, 7:42 a.m., a white sedan, 3 black SUVs. The footage hit the local news before the school bell rang. Margaret Haskin stood in her bathrobe, arms crossed, lips tight. The anchor said the phrase twice, "Federal indictment." They didn't mention Emily. They didn't mention me. But the name on the charging document, Haskin Charles M., said everything. Wire fraud, tax evasion, tampering with public funds allocated to education enrichment programs, the same programs used to sponsor the book fair. By noon, the school board had called an emergency meeting, closed session. 2 hours later, board president Callum James released a shaky statement. Effective immediately, I have chosen to resign in the best interest of the district. No apology, no admission, just vapor. He was gone by Friday, his name scrubbed from the website, his bio page redirected to a 404 error. Principal Harrow lasted another week. His exit was quieter. A memo emailed at 4:12 a.m., time-stamped from a hotel IP address. It read, "Due to personal reasons and recent media coverage, I will not be returning for the remainder of the school year." He didn't pack his things, didn't shake hands. Someone else cleared his desk. They left the framed quote behind. "Leadership is about presence." Ironic. The school's social media pages shut down for 4 days. When they came back online, the comments were disabled. But it didn't matter. The story had moved past them, because Carter had published the follow-up, this time with names, the files, the donations, the connections, the timeline. The article didn't accuse, it reported, and it destroyed. The story trended for 2 days under the hashtag number he was just reading. Students organized a walkout. 5th graders, 73 of them. They sat in silence on the playground, holding signs made from construction paper. "We miss Mr. Rourke. Books are not bad. Let us tell the truth." One girl, Marla, stood at the front and read from the longest shadow. She stuttered, cried halfway through, kept reading anyway. I watched it from home, didn't record it, didn't repost it, just watched. 2 weeks later, a new parent coalition submitted a request to the school board. They wanted the longest shadow added to the official curriculum. The motion passed, unanimously. I got the news via text from Jean. No emojis, just one line. They approved the book. I didn't respond. That same day, a letter arrived in my mailbox. No return address, just a single sheet of notebook paper in a blue envelope. Child's handwriting. "Dear Mr. Rourke, they said you couldn't come back, but I know you were right. I still read the book, and I'm not scared of my dad any. Thank you, no name." I didn't need one. I folded the letter, placed it in the same folder where the complaint had once lived. The last page, the only one that mattered. Later that week, Carter called. "They're offering you reinstatement," he said. I didn't answer. Full benefits. Public apology. Even a seat on the new board. Still silent. "You want it?" "No," I said. "They're going to ask why." I took a sip of coffee. Watched the trees move outside the window. Tell them I'm tired. The next Monday, I went for a walk past the school. Didn't go in, didn't linger. The new principal, someone I'd never met, stood outside greeting kids. She looked nervous, like she could feel the weight of ghosts on the walls. One student looked up and saw me. Logan. He waved. I nodded. That was enough. I don't teach anymore. I don't attend board meetings. I don't give interviews. And I don't explain what happened, because everyone already knows. Because silence, when placed in the right hands, is louder than shouting. Because some stories end with a slammed door. Mine ended with a whisper. That's all for this story. I'll be back with another one. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel. It motivates me to create more content like this.